Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Tim Walsh coming to you live on the campus of the University of Illinois from the Illinois Fire Service Institute, where today we're going to be talking about the 5 combat positions of command. We're going to have some fire today, we're going to have some lead outs, and we're going to put command company officers and chief officers in positions to run a fire. So today's handout has already been posted in the comments section. Let me know where you're watching from so I can say hello to you. And we're going to let you get signed in. I'll be back in a minute and we'll get started. Hey everybody, Tim Walsh coming to you live from the University of Illinois on the campus of the Illinois Fire Service Institute, where today we're going to be talking about the 5 positions of combat command. We're going to be burning some buildings, we're going to be leading out, we're going to be making some roofs. We're going to be going to work here after we go over the positions that we're talking about. Now, any of these positions can be filled by senior firefighters or senior company officers in your jurisdiction, and we'll talk about that. But today we're lucky enough to have the cadre from the fire command class that we teach here, both for company officers and for chief officers. These guys have been together for a long time, lots of years of service, and they've been to a lot of fires. So we're going to show you a way to control the fire ground. And in every NIOSH report that you see, command, control, and accountability are some of the rare things that happen on a fire ground when there's an issue. So we're going to talk about that, we're going to talk about how to manage that. Let's call out a couple of things right away. We have 45-mile-an-hour winds here today on campus. That's why we're inside delivering the teaching portion. But when we leave this building and we light that building off, it's going to be loud outside. So myself and the other instructors will speak loud. As usual, let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section. I'll be watching, and thanks for joining us. So let's get our staff introduced today. Chief Hoff, can you come in, please?
Bob Hoff, retired Commissioner, Chicago Fire Department, retired Chief Carroll Stream, currently my 33rd year as a field staff instructor with the University of Illinois.
Good afternoon, Bob Wilson, Fire Chief, Frankfurt Fire District. I've been teaching here at the Institute just about 20 years, and within that, doing the company officer program.
Anthony Pesha from Burbank Fire Department. I am a field staff instructor for First Aid Company Officer.
Alan Ebony, Bloomingdale Fire Department. Been with the Institute for about 5 years teaching the officer program.
Good afternoon, everybody. Lou Lake, retired Battalion Chief, Wheaton Fire Department. I've been on field staff at IFSI here for 20 years. I'm currently a Fire Officer Program Director, and I oversee Fire Ground and Company Officer Command School. And I'm also the IFSI representative for the Chicago Fire Department. Thank you so much for this afternoon, spending your time investing in your career and making yourself better, making yourself a better company officer, better chief officer. We're to talk about some concepts this afternoon, and it's a command system that we call 5 combat positions of command. Where does the combat come from? Well, the combat comes from the fact that we are still firefighters, and we show up. We want everyone in our class that we do down here to wear full turnout gear, full PPE. These 5 positions may end up interchanging on the fire ground. And I'm going to talk about the positions in a couple minutes, but let's talk about where the positions came from. Company Officer School has been running down in Champaign since 1984. We've been doing Command Officer School since 2005. We put thousands of students through our programs who have bought in and really subscribed to this system of command, and we're really happy to share that with you guys today. The system is built on accountability, communications, and control. And we're going to break those three things down as we go through today. We're going to see our accountability system. You're going to see how we're going to eliminate communications on the fire ground, and you're going to see how we're going to have command and control on the fire ground. Now, we know that we can't have command without control. We can't have control without command. So that is something that's built into the system that we're going to share with you. Now, a couple things that makes this important is a philosophy of command that we have in Fireground Officer School and in Fireground Command School down here at IFSI. That philosophy of command is built on the fact that we have common SOPs. Everyone is on the same page while they're operating on the fire ground. We're all trying to get to the same end state in accomplishing our mission. How do we do that? We do that with coordinated fire attack. We marry engines with trucks. We marry companies together. We also do that with an emphasis on fire behavior and building construction, knowing what the building's going to do with the fire and what the fire is going to do with the building. Now, you might ask, what are these 5 positions that we're talking about? We're going to talk about the incident commander's role. We're going to talk about an interior chief's role, putting a chief inside the building. We're going to talk about the safety officer's role, the RIT chief's role, and also the role of the plans chief. Now, these are 5 positions that we teach within our class. And you may ask yourself, well, I don't get 5 chiefs on my fire ground. How do I accomplish that? We're going to talk a little bit later on more in depth on how you accomplish that. We're going to show you how you can marry some of these positions together, where you can marry the incident commander with the plans chief, how you can marry safety and RIT together, and it could be the same individual. Now, you don't have to be a chief officer to fill these roles. We understand in rural areas, in smaller departments, you may not have the amount of chiefs, but you have senior firefighters, you have sharp officers, you have people on your fire ground that may show up that have been around a long time that you can certainly give these tasks to on the fire ground. So what we're going to do is I'm going to transition here. We're going to talk about the role of the still chief, or the first two chief. And thanks again so much, and we'll see you guys in a little bit. Thank you.
Hi, Alan. We'll talk about in that first in chief, right? So it's all about accountability, command, and control. Right? That first in chief, first you got to dress the part, wear the gear, right? You don't know where you're going to have to fill in, and we're actually going to transition the first chief to an interior chief position. The second part of that is you got to get out of the car to get accountability. You got to have that situational awareness. You got to be able to see it, you got to be able to hear it, feel it, and smell it. You got to know what's going on. And if we don't have that situational awareness, we're not going to be able to support the troops, which is what our role is, to support them. We want to give them what they need, when they need it, before they need it. Front loading the response, making sure that we have all the resources that are appropriate. And this doesn't happen by accident. The first thing we got to do is train together, right? So as chiefs, we got to conduct training just like the firemen do, and we should be training with them. The only way to tie this all together is when we do that. That is the key, is to train together. So the first in chief, he's going to come in, give it a size up, get out of the car, stand in front of the building for that situational awareness. The goal there is to get a real good read on the fire and get a real good read on the building construction. When we know those two things, we know where it was at, we know where that fire is going, we know how to get a predictable outcome at that point. Right, so we can deploy the resources appropriately. Once we get those first couple of resources deployed, a second chief shows up, or a second person that's going to fill that incident commander role, and I'll be able to transition interior. When I go interior, then I'll have control, the communication and control inside the building. I'll be able to relieve some of the burden off the company officers. Right? We have very understaffed fire departments where the company officers have to work. So they got to lead their company, they got to be the heel man, they got to conduct a search, they're helping with the forcible entry. At the same time, they got to be talking on the radio to asking for other things. So what we do when we insert that in interior chief is we relieve that burden of command from those individuals so they can focus on their task and tactics, right? And we can step back and be a little more strategy. So to further talk about how that incident command transition is going to play, we're going to bring in Chief Bob Wilson.
So I arrive on the scene, and I will assume the incident commander. And part of my role, responding to the incident, is still monitor the radio, find out what radio traffic is going on. If the alarm needs to be elevated up, possibly to a box alarm, bring additional resources in. So once I arrive on the scene, I'm fully geared up. A lot of times you'll see 2 radios on a lot of the chiefs working. Until additional resources get here, sometimes you still have to monitor the main channel as well as the fireground channel. So that's why a lot of times you'll see this until I have additional resources arrive. So once on my arrival, I'll meet up with the battalion chief that's on the scene. I'm gonna do a face-to-face, find out what conditions he had, what actions he's gonna need, and if there's any other resources. And he's gonna go to work, I'm gonna take over command, announce it on the radio that I'm assuming the incident command, and he will transition in there. That time there, I'm still wearing out my shoes, I'm still doing the 360s, monitoring the outside, I'm watching conditions, and having that guy on the inside also, now my span of control is I'm communicating with him. It's imperative as the incident commander to have some of those building trade, the building construction, reading smoke, we still have to train. We just can't, sit back at times in the car. So once all that happens, again, I'll be doing a 360. I'm monitoring, my eye should be focused onto the building. I can't get tied up at this time, sitting, doing a board, sitting, scribing, doing my own things. I have to see what's going on. I'm the eyes for those members that are in there. So once that gets moving, hopefully the other staff position will start coming in, and it's going to relieve me of some of my duties as well. So talking some of those other duties, I'm going to bring Chief Lake back in, and he can touch base on that.
Okay, so at this point, we have 2 chiefs on the scene. We have the still chief for the first arriving battalion chief. When the second chief got on the scene, the interior chief, the battalion chief went inside and took that interior role. It's announced on the radio, Battalion 1 is assuming interior, all radio communications are gonna go through Battalion 1. That way all the companies on the fire ground hear this. And what this does is this cuts down on radio traffic from company officers inside the building, because everything is being done face-to-face between the company officers and the interior chief. But now we get the 3rd chief show up. Well, where does he go? We make him the safety officer. The 3rd chief shows up, he is safety/RIT until our 4th member arrives. So what does that safety officer do? He has all his fire clothes on. He does a 360 of the building as well. One of the common themes you're gonna see with our group of instructors is that we believe wholeheartedly and that all the different chiefs that arrive on the scene or different positions go take a look at the back of the building. It's critically important. So the safety officer arrives, he goes to the back of the building, takes a look at, again, building construction. Is it lightweight, volume, velocity, intensity, and color of smoke? What type of imminent hazards do we have? What are things that are gonna happen on this fire ground potentially that could injure or kill firefighters? After he's done with his lap of the building, he comes back in and he checks in with the incident commander. Now the 4th chief shows up, we make him RIT. What we believe in is we take a chief officer or that position or that responsibility of a command officer and give it to the RIT team. The RIT team may be an engine, it may be a truck, we may marry an engine and a truck together depending on the size of the building. But we put a RIT chief with that group because his sole job is to determine, do we need more ground ladders? Where can I get you more hose lines? Where can I get you more air bottles? Where can I get that RIT team all the resources they need in the event of a mayday? Now when that happens, what we do is the RIT chief goes with the RIT company, he goes inside the building, and then we take our safety officer and we put him into what we call rescue. So safety now moves over into a rescue position, so the rescue officer and the RIT chief and the RIT company can address the mayday, and the incident commander and his plans chief can still address the remainder of the fire building. Okay, what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna turn it over to Chief Hoff, who's gonna go over the role of the plans chief, and you're gonna find out in the next couple minutes here, this is a critically important role, and this role takes a tremendous amount of burden off of the incident commander, so the incident commander can concentrate on fire attack and communicating with that interior chief. So Chief Hoff.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, the plans chief is the support staff for the incident commander. I'm going to take a lot of this, as me being the plans chief, I'm going to take a lot of burden off the incident commander. I'm going to document, I'm going to be having accountability for the companies inside the building. We'll go over the board in a second. But most importantly, I'm going to be the communications between dispatch and the fire scene. I'm going to relay messages given to me from the incident commander, such as status report on the fire under control, search is being conducted. I will be here to pick up things that he may not have on his mind right away because he's worried about the troops in the building, such as gas company, electric, utilities, All of those things I have documented on the board. With this board, we try to keep it generic so everyone can work off this board. There may be a time when I'm talking to dispatch and the safety chief comes up to tell me the gas meter's off, I can write that down. The RIT chief may come up to see who's in the building, what companies are working on the first floor. If I'm talking on the radio, it's documented on the board. He sees who's in the critical areas of the building. He doesn't even have to ask me that question. And again, we'll walk through the board now, how it works, very simple, keep it simple, and everybody knows whether it's a paramedic, a single role paramedic on the scene, which we've used, company officers that are not engaged in the fire, but more importantly, we've tried to get a chief officer in this position. To number one, you're listening to fireground, but number two, you're giving the communications to the dispatcher. So if we can come and look at the board, we have a lot of this preset. So in our instance, when we have 3 engines and 3 trucks coming on a fire, I'll document them here as they get committed. So the most important part of this board is, I call it the hot zone, inside the building. This is where the mayday could occur. So we got this building, it's 50 by 50. It's ordinary construction, it's apartments over a hardware store with no basement. Engine company 1's taking a hose line in on the first floor. Truck 4 is forcing entry and going in to do a search. I put them in that position in the building on the first floor. Now everyone knows as the RIT company comes in, the IC comes by, he knows they're committed inside the building. Once they're committed inside the building, I take and circle them over here. So for example, we'll take engine 2, we'll put them with a second line on the second floor, and we'll give them truck 5. Truck 6, our third due truck, is going to be our RIT truck automatically unless we need them. So now, when the IC comes by, if I'm on the radio talking, he sees we only have 1 engine company not committed. They're standing by, fully dressed and ready to go. So he knows that. Our medic units, again, we're going to assign that first medic unit unless we have a live patient. They're going to be RIT. They're going to be documented over here. So you can see how this flows. Companies that are circled are committed. The ones that are not are in standby mode. They're inside A of the building. Then we put our chiefs in here. So for the fire we're going to have today, Chief 1 is going to be IC. Battalion 2 is going to be interior. Battalion 3 is going to be safety. Battalion 4, RIT. And Deputy 5 is going to be plans chief. Now, as you move over, we have the searches up here. So as and I can also prod, if there's a lot of things going on, interior chief gets busy, I'll call him on the radio and say, interior from plans, how are we doing on those searches? When he tells me the primary's done on 1, I exit off. Can you write in here which company did it? You can write it over here, sure. But we'll go through all the searches in this 2-story building. When I get them done, I will give that progress report. Again, a reminder, friendly reminder right here, until the fire's under control, every 10 minutes a progress report is given to dispatch. After the fire's under control, we're doing overhaul, we switch back to 30 minutes. Now on the other side, the ancillary things we need, the utilities, gas company, building department, fire prevention, social services, the rehab unit, investigative task force, water department, board up, Red Cross, anything else you can think of, you could set your board up the way you want it. We also have rehab over here. So engine 2 is on their bells. For example, we have engine 3 standing by. Chief says, I need engine 2 to come out. Engine 3 goes in, I erase them. I put engine 3 in the building, and I put engine 2 in rehab. Accountability is constant. In the first 5 to 10 minutes of a fire, we can have a mayday or a bad situation, and also in the last 15 minutes of overhaul on a building that's on fire. When the building's weakened by water and weakened by fire, we may have a mayday. So in that respect, we want to keep this constant. So that's the plans chief is multitasking. And we do have, I think Chief Lake's going to go over this, talk about a portable board if you don't have this big board, and weather conditions. So, Chief Lake.
I'm going to bring Chief Lake in here for a minute, but we've got a couple questions come up. So Chief, can you please talk about how this board and the portable board affects NIMS, time stamping of fireground tasks that need to be completed, and God forbid a NIOSH death report when we have a firefighter that's seriously injured or horribly, tragically killed in action at a fire. Talk about how that works.
Yes, Chief Wallace, that's a terrific question. But this board, it serves multiple purposes. One of the best pieces of advice I can get you about the board is when you're done with it, don't erase it yet. All right, you need this stuff. But what this board does is, you see Chief Hawk wrote on here what our situation was. Here's our address. We got a fire at 11 Gertie. We have a 50 by 50 occupied ordinary 2-story building with apartments over the top. And you see that it's an offensive fire. So we already declared our strategy here on this fire. This will act as our incident action plan for everybody that's walking up, and we'll take a look at this board, whether it be the RIT chief, whether it be the safety officer. So we have our strategy here. We want to keep that, and you're going to see in a little while when Chief Hoff is going to make some progress reports back to the dispatch center. We teach that they should be done every 10 minutes. His 10-minute mark, he tells them we have water on the fire, the searches are underway. When we get into that 20-minute mark, we're given a progress report there. What happens here is that gets time-stamped, and that's where this is really important for you as an incident commander. We can tell days later or months later when that fire had water on the fire, when we found victims inside the building, where the victims came out, who brought the victims out, what ambulance they were transferred to. It's a timestamp through dispatch by doing the progress reports, and that's where those progress reports are really critical. So we get done with our fire now, we go back and we tell our chief officers in classes all the time, take a picture of your board. Take a picture of the top, the center, the two outsides of your board. We like to refer to this as the hot zone or center ice. We have our left and right flank. We go ahead and we take pictures of all of this, and then that becomes part of our NIOS report, or a part of our NIFRS report. Now, where that becomes really critical and important for us, in the event of a severe injury, or in the event of a line of duty death, God forbid, we are able to go back and track our timeline of everything that took place on that fire ground, how things were time-stamped, and who accomplished what. So this board ends up being very critical for us.
So Chief, while you're transitioning over to the portable board, I want you to talk about, we had one question come in. This doesn't replace the accountability tags or the personal pass tags. Explain how they interoperate with each other, please, before you go into the portable board.
We still use the accountability tags. The tags that are on the rig, we still use those accountability tags. One of the things that we teach in command school, and we've all done this on our jobs back home, is every shift commander would get a daily roster, and he would get a daily roster from all the towns around him that he would run with. Back before I retired and I was working, I would get 6 daily rosters in the morning from 6 different departments. So I knew at any given time, because I would take my rosters and they would go in my box like this. They would go into my command center. So I knew at any given time who was on what rig, what their names were, and that's how we tracked our accountability as far as names and who was on what companies. And that was important for us, and that's something that worked out really well for us. Okay, Chief Walsh had asked me to talk about, you need a big board like this? Preferably yes, but can you get away with something like this? This is all that you can do? Absolutely. Now you take a look at this board. This board is just a much smaller version than what we have here, okay? And the smaller version of this board helps that initial chief when he gets on the scene to be able to write and track his companies, declare his strategy, state what mode of the fire that they're in, and then the information from here then could get transferred to the bigger board. Now, what's unique about this board, and we designed it, and this board, if you come to command school over the last several years, we give all our command officer students this board to take home with them, because we want them to remember this system. This system is tried and true. It's worked for us. It's worked on hundreds of fire grounds, and we're very confident in it. So when you come to command school and you take command school, you get a board like this. You learn throughout the course of the week how to track companies on here. It's a 5-day class. It's about a 56+ hour work week, and you're getting sets and reps, which is what we need. And we talked, and I believe Chief Emity talked about it a little while ago, about the importance of training. This is a perishable skill. Everything we do is a perishable skill. If we don't do it for a couple months, we can't show up at 2 o'clock in the morning and expect that we're going to be able to do it. That's why we're very heavy on training, and we're very heavy on, this is done on a monthly basis at your battalion levels. It's a great drill to do. Go to your battalion next door, go to your department next door, get on the same page with your SOGs. If you adopt a system like this, and many departments across the nation and many departments across the state of Illinois have taken this system, gone home, and adopted it in their MABUS areas as well.
One last thing, Chief, before we go outside and start that building on fire. Let's talk about the PAR, right? Let's talk about the PAR and how we're taking accountability for the companies on this level with the command board, but each individual company officer is accountable for the members of their company. Let's draw that distinction, please.
Yeah, there's three different PARs, or 3 different answers to PAR. PAR, no PAR, or PAR in progress. We understand that. Having a plans chief set up and having an interior chief doesn't release the burden from the company officer inside the building to be accountable for his own people. company officers have to know where their people are at. Now, when we call for a PAR, when we're asking for a PAR, that interior chief who is at the point of attack, first couple minutes of a fire, he's gonna be with the first engine and first truck on the first floor. We have fire extension, say, into the second floor. That interior chief is gonna go up to the second floor. His point of attack of where he's at, he's going to get a face-to-face PAR from those company officers. Now, if we're doing a PAR, a major event happens on the fire ground, we're gonna pull people out of the systematic evacuation or systematic withdrawal. Now, that plans chief can call companies specifically, starting with the point of attack or the most danger of the hot zone, and he would do that through the interior chief. And then he would branch out from there to the second floor companies operating outside the building. So another advantage of having this plans chief is that that plans chief can actually conduct the PARs for the incident commander. Now, we keep talking about plans and all of these duties and jobs that the plans chief has. If the plans chief is taking care of all of this ancillary stuff, as important as it is, what does the incident commander get to do? He gets to concentrate on the fire. He actually gets to do his job as that incident commander, communicating with that interior chief while the plans chief takes care of his business outside for him. So that's a great question.
Awesome, thanks, Chief Lake. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna transition outside to the taxpayer burn prop, and we're gonna get a couple of fires going in there, and we're gonna put some companies to work, and we're gonna let you watch how we put the command board in service and the conversations that the command officers have with the company officers as they arrive on the scene, the orders that are given, and how those critical fire-gone tasks are checked off and accounted for, along with the accountability of the members that are working inside the building. So let's transition outside. Me and my camera person, Chief Lake. Chief Lake is going to be narrating. Hey, Lou, would you get the door for me?
Yes, sir.
And we'll get outside and we'll get going. I know this is why you guys watch, because we actually demonstrate what we do here. We're just not all book smart guys. We actually practice what we preach. So like I said earlier today, it's 45-mile-an-hour winds out here, so we're going to talk a little louder, and we're going to get going here. We're going to get our radios turned on. We're going to make sure the fires are going. Let me check with my guys here. Hold on a minute. Are we good with the fires, lads? Yeah? Good? Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go off the camera. Lou will be narrating. I'm going to dispatch the companies, and we'll get going for you in just 1 second here. Thanks for joining us again today. Remember, the comments are for questions, and today's handout you can use in a later training is posted at the top of the comments section. Thanks for joining us. Ready to go, Chief?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, let me get the companies dispatched for you.
One of the things that Chief Walsh had talked about in the beginning of
Battalion 2 and Engine 1.
was, where are you guys from? Where are you guys watching this at?
Battalion 2 and Engine 1, take the report of a fire, 11 Gurney Drive, 11 Gurney Drive for the chief of the engine.
Shoot us a message on Facebook here and
11
let us know.
Gurney
Because if
Drive
you've been
for
through this
Battalion
process, you understand how valuable it is and how much information you can have to bring back home with you. So let us know if you've been through the class or not and what you thought. So thank you.
Dispatch to Battalion 2. Go ahead. Hey, Chief, we're getting multiple calls on this. It's a working fire. I'm going to give you a working fire response, all right? Back to you, Chief. Your companies are yourself and Engine 1, Engine 2, Engine 3, Truck 4, Truck 5, Squad 6, and Truck 7. Men units 8, 9, and 10. Chief officers are as follows. Chief 1's coming in to assume command. Battalion 3 is safety. Battalion 4 is red. Are you establishing command on the A side, sir?
Please, yeah, you show Battalion 2 on scene. We got a working fire in the first floor of a two-story in the commercial occupancy.
Hey, Engine 1, grab me a 2.5. Get a 2.5. To the front door.
You see what Chief Emmety did there? He showed up on the scene. He gave a good description of his building. He's doing his 360 walk around right now to see what the rear of the building looks like, to see if he can pick up on what type of building construction he has and what the location of his fire is. Now, the engine's leading out a 2.5-inch hand line to the first floor on a commercial building. Standard line based on what we teach. So as the crews are leading out, Chief Emmety, as the still chief or first arriving chief, is gathering intel. He's gathering information. You can see here that the truck arrived on the scene next. So as he's giving his orders, this is the advantage of being in front of the building, being ready to go. It's the amount of face-to-face communication that you could have with the company. So that becomes critically important as well when you have an acting officer, maybe it's his first day acting up as a company officer. They like that reassurance of being able to see that chief on the scene.
We'll be conducting a primary on the first floor.
Engine 2, give me, looks like we might have extension up to the second floor. Give me an inch and 3/4 up those stairs.
Okay, so she's giving orders. We're obviously in an offensive strategy. We have 3 fire companies working on the scene. Chief Emity is developing his incident action plan, which he is now going to relay to Chief Wilson, who is going to be the incident commander.
Going to the first floor. Fire attack and search. Engine 2, going to the second floor. Fire attack checking for extension. When the next truck gets on scene, I need him on the second floor. I'm going to go interior. I need you interior. All right, I'll make the announcement.
The interior chief is now announcing on the radio that he's going to take interior. All communications from the companies inside the building at this point are going to go through the interior chief. Chief Wilson on the scene, he's assuming the incident command, developing his incident action plan. You can see that he's doing a walk around himself, so he wants to get a picture of this building also. What type of construction, what are our fire conditions, and we know that may have changed in the last couple of minutes since the interior chief went around and looked around the back side. So all radio communications, and if you pay attention, you're going to see the minimal amount of radio traffic that we're going to have because of the face-to-face communications that are going to take place with the interior chief. Our next chief that arrived on the scene, Deputy 5, he's been assigned plans. And if you take a look at his board, this is where the track on the company starts.
First floor.
We already had our companies tracked with the first 2 chiefs. And now, as you see, Chief Hoff is starting to track the fire companies on the board, and this is where the accountability really helps out by having this plans position. You see, Chief Wilson is the incident commander. He can concentrate on his fire, concentrate on his fire attack, listening to the radio for the interior chief to call him. Now we have Chief Pesha shows up on the scene. Okay, he's going to be the safety officer. You saw how he walked over to the board. All he had to do was take a peek at the diagram and the circled companies. He knows everybody that's operating on this fire ground at this time. Chief Schubert has just arrived and he's going to be RIT. All he has to do is take a quick look at that board, a quick conversation with Chief Hoff. Now he can go talk to that RIT team and come up with his game plan and do his own size up of the building. You see him doing that as he's doing his 360. So Chief Hoff here is that plans chief. He's going to be talking to dispatch. He's the Radar O'Reilly of this fire ground. He is here to get that incident commander everything that he needs. He's tracking the amount of companies that are in staging. And we have some emergency traffic coming in here.
Truck 5 got a victim up on the second floor. B side of the building. We're going to come out the east side, second floor. Heavy EMS running.
What ambulance I got?
Ambulance 9's gonna, we got ambulance, medic 8 is RIT. Medic 9's gonna take the civilian victim.
Okay, truck 5, we got
Okay.
ambulance 9.
From
Is there an Alpha?
Brody Drive
Take
Command.
the patient to
Be advised, we
ambulance 9,
have
right
one
here
line
in
on the
Alpha.
fire. It's a 50 by 50 as given before, 2-story ordinary occupied. Apartments over a hardware store. We're going offensive. There's no basement in the building. We have fire on the second floor. We're taking the second line there. We have 1 civilian victim, red. Medic 9 going to northwest.
Primary complete on 1.
Okay, you see that awesome responsibility of that plans chief to give that progress report back to dispatch. We talked about time stamping our incident. That's where it comes from. It comes up from a very heads up plans chief who just gave the report, the progress report, back to dispatch at that 10-minute mark.
Go ahead, second
Now
floor.
everybody operating on this fire ground right now knows the status of the fire and the status of the searches. You could see that by looking at the command board as well, that we have searches that are underway and we have companies operating inside the building. And what this does, if you notice, Chief Wilson is doing his job.
Brody Drive Command. Be advised, the primary and secondary searches on the first and second floor complete during the secondary searches. The main body of fire is knocked. We're checking for extension in the walls and the ceilings.
Hard to see another progress report because we hit another benchmark on the fire ground. We started getting water on the fire and searches were completed. critical information back to that dispatch center, and it's critical information for all the other companies on the fire ground to be aware that that's taking place. Now we see Chief Wilson walking back over here. By having this plans chief, this frees him up and gives him the ability to be the eyes and ears outside this building and have the situational awareness to maintain for the welfare of the people operating inside the building.
Be advised, we got engine 3 and squad 6 standing by.
Okay, now you heard that piece of communication there. Plans is telling the incident commander we have a couple companies arrived on the scene that are in staging. He's tracking all of these companies for command.
Go ahead, interior. Let's get the company in our place first.
Okay, you just heard the interior chief say that he needed a couple companies replaced. That shows the value and how important it is of what Chief Hoff told the incident commander, Chief Wilson, that he had companies ready, available, and are coming up from staging. We advocate keeping an engine and a truck behind the command post in the event that 10 minutes, 15 minutes into our fire, we'll have to start replacing companies.
Got the final complete on 2.
We got it open up and we're doing a final watch now.
Okay, I'm looking at the board. You still got
So you hear this radio communication right now. That is the interior chief who's wearing out a pair of shoes in this building, touching base with all of his company officers, getting all of his intel, relaying it back out to the incident commander. Now what they're doing here is they're talking about
Dispatch from Guardy Drive Command.
the interior is telling command that the fire has been knocked down. We're checking for extensions and all the searches are complete. And it's coming out to do a face-to-face with the incident commander, just so the incident commander has a thorough understanding of what's going on in our fire building. So our status of our fire right now, we got the fire, we got the main body of fire, put water on it, so we got water on the fire. Our searches, some of them are complete. We're still doing final searches. We know there's 3 searches, primary, secondaries, and finals. It's a responsibility of that interior chief to maintain and ensure that all 3 sets of those searches get taken, that they're underway and they get taken care of. One of the things we really like about this system is that you could see where Chief Wilson, the incident commander, is concentrating on the fire. He is concentrating on the fire building. He doesn't have his head down writing on things. You know, he's got really good situational awareness of what's going on. And if the plans chief is keeping him abreast and keeping him up to speed, because they're both being on fire ground. Plans is on the main channel and fire ground, but if Chief Wilson, the incident commander, doesn't hear anything, Plans will hear it as well, and he'll prompt him.
Okay, so let's take the camera person over here a little bit, and I want to have Lou talk about the command board a little bit before we wrap up here. So you watch Bobby Hoff actually fill out this command board live as we assigned companies, as companies were assigned to him, and his fire ground tasks were completed. So let's get a good shot of that, please. And Lou Lake, can you talk about how that progresses from left to right on this board as tasks are completed and where companies are located? And Chief Hoff is actually filling in those boxes to make sure we have strict accountability of all the tasks that need to be done.
Yes, what we're seeing on the board is we start from left to right, and as we described earlier, the center part of this board is the most important part. That's the point of attack, or the hot zone. You see how we draw in the companies of where they're at. If this company engine 3 gets replaced, we circle them or put a line through them. We write the next company to replace them next to it. So this gives us a timeline throughout our entire incident of who was where, who replaced who when. If we look at the left side of this board here, this is our working fire response of 3 engines and 3 trucks. Yours might be 2 and 2 or 2 and 1, whatever your response is. Preload your board, write your companies in on this left side. When they're committed, they get circled. We write them on the board here, so we know at this given point right now where every single fire company on this fire ground is at, how they're operating and what they're doing.
Awesome, thanks, Lou. So a couple of things before we wrap up here today, right? We got to see how command and control can affect a firefight and why chief officers should be dressed in full PPE. Because what happens if that 1st Battalion chief pulls up and he's just wearing a t-shirt and a citizen appears at the window where the ladder truck laddered the window building? You have to be a firefighter your whole career. You have to get dressed, you have to put your PPE on, and you have to take care of the people that are operating in the building. And you have to know where they are operating at. That's how we get over line of duty injuries and line of duty deaths. So let's thank our sponsors for today. MSA, that gave us these great new air packs that we're wearing on the fireground today. We're able to use these G1s and teach them all across the state in every program that we deliver to make sure that we have the best equipment. ATC Fire Command Boards, who allows us to use their command boards in every class that we teach and gets them to us so we can use them. Elkhart Brass Nozzles, Kuriyama Fire Hose, and Pierce Fire Trucks. We appreciate all you guys partnering up with the University of Illinois Fire Service Institute. I'm going to bring Chief Lake back in here one more time. He's going to sum up 4 or 5 key points very quickly about things that you should be doing at home to get this done, and then we'll close out for today. Chief?
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time with us this afternoon and spend a little bit of time with us to talk about this command system that we have. One of the biggest things, reason we do this, it's accountability. It's about taking care of the troops that are on the scene. That is first and foremost. Our responsibility as chief officers is to make sure that our members go home to the best of our ability. So how do we do that? The system is about accountability, it's about command and control, it's about communications. We need to train as chief officers. We need to make a concerted effort to put our fire clothes on, train with the chiefs and the companies next door to us to make sure that we maintain what it is that we're trying to accomplish here, and that is firefighter safety and welfare and firefighter accountability on the fire grounds.
Thanks a lot, Chief, for a great class. Hey, we'll be back the first week of December with the fire prevention crew. We're going to be talking about Christmas decorations in the home. Obviously, we have an uptick in fires all across the country and in residential homes during the fire season, and we don't want that to happen to you. So our fire prevention crew will be talking about ways that that doesn't happen in your home. So until then, we appreciate you joining us here at the Illinois Fire Service Institute on the grounds of the University of Illinois. Please take care of each other out on the street and be safe.